Magic.
Indeed. All right, good evening. This is the November 10th, 2015 Financial Policies and Procedures Working Group meeting. Kind of a continuation from October 27th. We had some proposals to the Financial Policies and Procedures document for the town, and some we voted on and finalized, and we still had some ongoing discussion on the undesignated fund balance and free cash. So we're going to focus on that tonight, and that's the primary focus of tonight. So, Steve, you want to lead us through, or Bonnie?
Sure.
Who do you want?
I'll let Steve go, because
Okay.
I've been focused on the books.
Let's see. So on this first page, what's changed since last meeting, I fixed C, I fixed the word OPEB.
Okay.
It's not spelled right. And then, second page, well, we got rid of what was the reference to the CPC fund. That's been eliminated.
Wait a minute.
It's not here because
Oh, because it's just gone.
it's just gone.
Okay, and at the top, we changed other budgetary uses, or whatever it said before, and now it's extraordinary uses?
Extraordinary uses.
No,
And
exception only.
on the last page, this is the appendix.
The capital projects. So we get rid of the 20%.
So we talked, yeah,
We talked about that for G.
Yep.
okay.
And the way you have it set up now, though, by going, well, we still have to, the first part, make sure that our basic reserves are all taken care of. So this is all whatever's left. So, okay.
I'm catching up with you guys because I wasn't here at that meeting.
Okay, sure.
If I may, and it's on the first page, and it's therefore the following, so third paragraph, therefore the following policy. Darn it. Apologies. And it's the first one there, 1. So you got, so actually, what I should say, I'm catching up and I apologize. Therefore, the following policy must be applied in each budget cycle. Who's applying it? So when we say, because these are selectmen goal, or selectmen policies, right? Selectmen and Fincom policies. So is it Fincom?
Well, it's the town's
Financial
financial
staff.
policy, so the
Right.
financial staff recommends, and then we agree, and then the town approves. I mean, that's the normal
When we say the
process.
policy must be applied,
So I basically apply it through the budget documents and the budget preparation, so the documents that you get before you have all of these reserves taken care of beforehand. And
Then
then you make your
if there's a certain office/individual that's supposed to be doing an action, the policy should direct it at that person or office, I should think, rather than just the following policy must be, because who's doing it?
So maybe to say be presented by the AAFB.
I think, to your point, I think it's, it should be the series in which it all starts, right? So, finance designates free cash, and then it comes to the FinCom to make recommendations to Board of Selectmen for final approval, or modifications too. So maybe in that,
But that whole stream is the entire policy, it's just not this section.
Right.
I mean, you could make your point on any single section here, because before anybody sees things, like Bonnie says, she's applying what's in here as the minimums.
not as a minimums, up to. There are no minimums.
No, I mean, in the entire policy.
Oh,
Right,
So if there's
she's applying.
guidelines
There's some
here,
minimums, like the 5% minimum,
Right,
I gotta,
yeah,
you know, I
yeah,
gotta
if
keep
if there's
that.
guidelines here, she's already applied them before you see anything.
Right, the only reticence I have, and I understand what you just said, is that this policy doesn't say the Board of Selectmen must. If it's a Board of Selectmen policy, it's their policy, but nothing in an organization's policy says that organization must. At least I don't see it that way. That's what really caught my attention. So if this is more a case as Bonnie's preparation and she begins this as the baseline, that maybe the
What would you
following...
word it?
Therefore, the following policy should be applied in each budget cycle as the baseline. And if I'm, replowing earth you've already gone through.
No one's brought it up. Makes sense? My eyes anyways.
Well, those first ones to me are must.
Yeah.
The minimum UFB balances,
Yeah, but to the exclusion of everything else then?
yeah. That's making sure you have enough cash on hand going forward. That's just good, basic finance.
Well, 5% is an easy number, too. The science behind 5 is reasonable, but it's not an immutable law of physics.
Okay.
Right? I mean,
All right,
so to
make
say
it 10,
it has
make
to
it
be
10.
5.
Make it 10.
But that's the
So, I
point.
mean, it's the same thing. So I think way back when we started trying to put money away, we put really a small amount away that we felt we could sustain. And over time, we've been able to build some reserves.
And I don't want to
No.
knock the 5, as far as I think it's the wrong number. It's as good as any in that range, give or take.
Right.
So, but I don't see it has to be 5. That's what we desire it to be.
No, but it's a minimum, is what we're saying.
It's a policy.
I think that the 5 came up because this number 1 is a hedge against 9C cuts that might come in March or poor collections in poor financial times. And 5% is not unreasonable on the levy amount, which is 70% of our budget, or the state aid figure, which is like 20% of our budget. 9C cuts typically come in pretty heavy and in the last part of the year, so
Right.
this would prevent us from having to go back and make some draconian cuts in the budget. That's what this is intended as a hedge
I don't think it's a
against.
bad number.
Yeah.
And maybe I just, misinterpreted, how you present, or how I interpreted what you said. I just don't see it as sacrosanct. But it's a good number to work with. And the way we go, the following policy must be applied. Let's do this, because I don't want to hold you up on it, because I'm going to take some of your time, and I'm bailing early to go to the other meeting. So,
Drop the bomb and leave.
yeah, and that's not right,
Well,
and I
that's
don't
what
want to do
pilots
that.
do, right?
Anyway, here's what I'd ask then.
Pilots do.
I gave you some thoughts, and if you think later on that BJ's got half a brain and it's worth something, or he doesn't even have half a brain and it's worth nothing, your call. How's that?
Always appreciate your input, Paul, and you're always thinking of something, so it's good to be. And I think this is, right now, we're trying to get through a couple of items here, but there will be more next year that
Yes.
we'll go back through.
All right,
too.
so,
Yep,
thanks for the time.
all right, thank you.
Mr. Glavy.
Here's your extra handout. Okay, I can end up someplace else.
So to get to the point that Paul was making about should or must in that sentence.
I think for now, we're leaving it as is for further discussion and thought.
That's,
How are you,
I
Paul?
agree,
So
'cause
we
based
can
on what
bring,
you said,
Paul
some of
Paul
those are
always has
musts.
some good intuition. There's a copy of what we're talking about. PJ brought up a point as to that first sentence, third paragraph. Therefore, the following policy must be applied in each budget cycle. And his theory was, what is must as far as the actual preparation of the document? Or recommendations.
I hear your point, I don't see the line. Which line, Jim?
Right before one, see where one
Okay.
is, right above that
Therefore,
sentence
the
there.
following
Yeah,
policy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
Just say,
none of this stuff has the force of law, so really to say it must be followed is, you can say it, but it doesn't mean it. Well, it should.
Well, it's kind of a starting point. I mean, it is a designated starting point. From there, everything can be adjusted, but I'm saying this, how we will apply it.
Paul raised a good point. Paul raised a good point. It sort of stirs my thoughts.
Okay.
Not that you want to circumvent policy, but certainly the Board of Selectmen, it's their policy. Sometimes you do what you need to make things work, so.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's not like a bylaw,
No.
but, not to undermine.
But you always have that connotation of must. And, when you say it, it brings that almost bylaw feel to it, so.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you can look at it the other way, too. You're also just setting direction for the staff, the town staff. How do you start the budget? This is, you will start this way. Bonnie doesn't get to say, gee, this year maybe I'll do 3%, or this year maybe I'll do 7%.
That's in the numbers.
There's guidelines here, so
Yeah,
this is
that's-
how you're going to do it.
And that's why,
How would that not be the case if you put should in there, though? I mean, I'm not gonna get hung up on it personally, I don't think it matters either way.
Will.
Yeah,
Whatever, I mean,
well,
Okay.
Yeah, well.
but I think the only thing that we don't want to do is present a case where, when the auditors look at it, it looks a little bit too wishy-washy. A lot of what, we've gotten decent ratings on our policies and controls. So I don't think that the percentages and the dollars that are involved in those areas are significant enough that it would really cause pain further down.
and
So
now,
I-
I've had my opportunity to hear your thoughts. Let it ride. If it doesn't work, there's always
I'm trying
opportunity to change.
The very first thing the rating agencies ask Bonnie about every time is the amount of free cash that we have. Free cash, stabilization, is just funds that are set aside. They ask her every time that balance either goes up or down, what causes that, and especially if it goes down. So in the years that we use it a little bit, they're expecting her to tell her how it's getting back to the levels where it was.
Right.
No, I'm with
That's,
100%.
that is the first question that's
I was just
asked.
railing, I don't know if you read the Globe today, the state's rainy day fund,
Right.
2.2 billion over the last
2
3
billion,
years.
oh, yeah.
And I was railing against that, so on our scaling this down to us, I agree with you.
Okay.
Okay, so down in G, we're taking up to 20% out and making it open-ended. Is that
Yes,
what we said?
that was the recommendation last time.
Okay. And again, on the third page, because we took the CPA out of that section, and we says, well, you
So I can
could
I back up
spend it.
before you go that far?
Sure.
Which is page 6 as far as the document goes.
Okay.
And it's in the paragraph, says therefore the following policy is recommended. Just coincidental, by the way, that particular one. And I'm looking at 2B. In the final,
What is he looking at?
with section 13 stabilization,
2B.
it's the third paragraph that's
Okay.
just the one line that begins, therefore the following policy recommended, and then there's 1, 2, and I'm looking at 2B. Down the bottom, and the Finance Committee must develop a detailed plan that will replenish the fund. Who executes that? So you've developed the plan, FinCom. Now we got a plan. Who executes it?
Town meeting.
Town meeting.
Okay. So are you developing a detailed plan to recommend to town meeting, to the Board of Selectmen? So
Well, I mean,
Well,
that's
then it
really
gets
all
worked
any of
into the
boards
budget
can do.
process, and
I mean, should
It's
we
all
have
part
some
of town
words
meeting.
to that effect in here? The FinCom must develop a detailed plan to present to, now that you've done the plan, what do we do with it? You just happen to
Okay.
know that. If we're writing policy as prescriptive as
Realistically, we
this.
shouldn't say the finance committee and financial team. 'Cause, I mean, it'll be done in-house, it won't be the finance committee.
Oh, I'm not railing that it's the
No, I'm just
FinCom
adding
or
that
that.
point in.
Just now that the plan is developed, no. What do we do with it and who executes it?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that point, PJ, putting in, develop a plan for town meeting, but whatever. But I would say that realistically, the finance committee isn't gonna get out its pens and pencils and draft the plan. It'll be working with the finance team, so.
Good point.
No, Finance Committee working with the finance team.
and develop detailed
Or
plan to
finance,
recommend
working with the finance committee, I don't care.
to the Board of Selectmen and town meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, is that okay, Steve?
Say it one more time.
So I guess it was going to be the finance team and FinCom develop detailed plan to recommend to the Board of Selectmen and town meeting. I'm overthinking any of these things, guys, just slap me.
So, to go backwards too, Paul, with the CPA money, the extraordinary uses,
Could be considered regular
Would be-
capital, could be extraordinary.
right, so,
So I think that's what we talked about when we were sort of
mushing it back
getting our
and forth.
underwear on a
Right,
twist over
exactly.
CPA being in there.
Right.
I think that's how we sort of rationalized it.
And this
No, the
is-
CPA was capital.
Right.
It's capital.
It has to go through the capital plan in order to use these funds, which will be covered in G. And H is
Anything above and
really
beyond.
Any real
Nothing
oddball
should-
stuff, right?
Yeah, what would?
never get used.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
And I think that was the discussion that you
Yeah.
guys had last year.
Yep.
If it's not in the capital plan, then that extra money doesn't flow into CPC, right?
Right. Yes. Okay.
And I think the thing to watch out for is how do we get the kinds of projects that flow into CPC, like this piece of land pops up tomorrow. Thought about, well, it's not on the capital plan, but how do we have the flexibility? You know, we then have to lay it up against the capital plan and say, is it more important or less important?
You'd
than things that are
absolutely have to make
Yeah,
decisions based on where that money comes from, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that deliberations through
Right.
the capital projects, through,
Yeah.
you know, sure.
Without me, you've got a quorum.
Right.
That's the master plan. Thanks, folks.
All right, thanks for coming, Paul, PJ.
Have fun.
I'll see you guys after Thanksgiving.
I'll be right up. What are we in, I'll work at the police station.
Yes.
Paul will bring the pizza.
Police station should be fully stocked with all sorts of free food.
Okay, so then on the last page, the appendix, this is the appendix to the CPA piece of the policy. Right in the middle of the page. It says, as undesignated fund balance could also be added to the CPA fund as a funding source for appropriate capital projects, as described later in this appendix, and the appendix goes on and says, yeah. And the use of the UFB for capital projects is specified under B and G, of section 12. So it just refers right back to the main policy. And that's all I had in my notes.
So, just came to mind, the capital exclusion fund that was just
Debt
passed.
exclusion?
The debt exclusion. Where, should we have that in here?
I think we
Yeah.
We did.
did
We
we
talked
did that
about
the
it
last,
last week.
yeah, we did that the last session.
Yeah, we did that from
I
last
thought it
week.
was in there last week.
Yeah,
It was.
It was, we talked about it last week.
Yeah, we
We
approved the
approved it
language.
last week.
Right.
Approved
Last
the
week.
language.
Okay.
And it's referred to in item D on the first page there, debt exclusion, stabilization fund.
Yep.
Oh. My bad.
just looking, so if we have our things at the top to make sure we have our minimums for UFB. And then we start going down the list, right? So we've got that, so then you've got up to 2.5% of the operating budget, that's not a percentage of the UFB, that's whatever that is. And then 20% of the excess balance, so is that the
The excess-
decreasing balance as we go down, the 20%, is that the decreasing balance, or is that the balance that we have once we get through the mandatory things at the top?
It's 20% of the excess amount over the 7.5%
Okay.
that would be
All right, so
there.
that's a fixed
So if it's
number.
it's $1 million, it's
Right.
20% of $1 million.
Okay,
Up to.
Up to, correct.
so 20, 40.
And 0 if we want.
0 if you want.
Well, yeah, okay, I know you handed out before the actual number as it went across. Like, we looked at it year to year, I know that's one thing you talked about too, having to go up and down, so we do have to keep an eye on that as well, but it's there. And so we
It's
have to
there,
determine
yeah, it's
whether
part of
there's
the
need to be
dynamic in the
spent or not.
worksheets and.
Okay. Okay. I'm good with that. Anybody else? And thank you for tying in the other part of the CPA fund, because I think it's important to have that reference there as well, so that's good.
I'm all set.
Set?
Make a motion to approve it.
Okay?
Recommend
That's amended.
as amended.
Second.
Second, third.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Paul, are you voting?
No,
Okay.
just a spectator.
Not really, but okay. All right, that's done then. Thank you.
Great.
So I think that's what we'll do for the financial policy for now, and then probably in January or something, we'll take another look and see what the other topics that need to be addressed, but I think we want to get through that one now. The only other thing briefly I had was minutes from last meeting. I did send them around. I sent another one just right before I left the house, so you won't have it. I just updated it to say that we had already approved the changes to the exclusion, this stabilization fund. Here, I got a couple of them here. So we have them.
You got it already?
I got it.
Okay. Make a motion to approve the minutes of the October 27th meeting.
Second,
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
We'll wait until after holidays before we reconvene?
For policies and procedures,
Yeah.
unless you really want to see us again before then.
No, I'm good. No, I'm
Yeah, I
good.
think
Love talking to you guys, love talking to you
Okay,
guys.
so we can probably, yeah, so we'll
time
schedule
in
something
January.
for that.
So,
Perfect.
All right, you want to,
Make a motion to adjourn, sure, second.
third.
thank you very much. We can switch there. And,
You.
Switch is flipped.
Okay, welcome to the November 10th, 2015 FinCom meeting. Tonight, we've got Mike Lynn and
Kevin
Kevin Hunt. Talk about Alumni Field and what's going on over there and what's needed. And then we're going to go through some, the FinCom team here is going to go through some of the walkthrough for Saturday's full-day budget meeting. Those are our primary focuses for tonight. So without further ado, Mike, I'd like to present, and Bonnie, you've got the presentation
I don't have a
there.
wand like Keith does, so just tell me when to.
Okay, so,
You just say beep when you're through.
yeah, well, thanks for inviting us. We've got a little presentation we'd like to just scroll through here, so I think we're probably ready for the next slide. Current challenges, our fields are unable to support the amount of use that is currently demanded by high school and youth teams. We have a good problem in Littleton. We have lots of kids at the youth level and in the schools participating in athletics. Fields are in a constant state of degradation. Limited amount of field space, and very high demand for fields in Littleton. Again, times have changed. Used to have maybe like Pop Warner football and Little League baseball, and now you've got all these, so many sports now. We've added sports at the school and the youth levels. And development of new active recreation areas is constantly may take away open space and would probably take a long time. Some of the places that are available. I don't know if you want to add to any of this stuff as I go
Well, I
along.
think with that comment about the additional field space being created throughout town, it's been a battle between the advocates for preserving open space, and the town does have some properties that are available. And but the one comment I would make on any of those areas outside of the high school athletics, they don't benefit the high school. And right now you're seeing a situation within the high school athletics especially, that there is just a lack of field space. And so this proposal with Alumni Field to do something here, it's a field that's used by the high school, and it really would be the primary focus here of, essentially it would be the town's best field that you could have to play sports on, that would then be used by both youth and high school athletics. If we were to go the route of trying to push for additional field space being developed, I don't think that's the ideal scenario for the school department, especially because then you'd be taking, school varsity athletics to off-sites. This
Yeah,
is
we
a
wouldn't.
school. You wouldn't do that. So
It doesn't work.
so essentially, this field, I think, especially what we're looking to present here, it's a field that is used a lot, gets a lot of use, benefits both youth and the high school athletics, but clearly, from what you'll see, the field does need to be addressed.
So, will you talk about it later? What else, besides football, what all do we play on here now? Just to,
Okay, so right now, we play all youth and high school football games there. Just games, not practices.
okay.
I play night soccer there, so night varsity and JV soccer games. We play no field hockey there. And in the spring, we play girls lacrosse, high school and youth out of that field. The plan would be, if it were to become, well, I don't really, the purpose of this isn't to talk about artificial or natural surfaces right now. So the plan would be, if it were renovated and it were a surface that could handle a lot of sports, which would essentially be synthetic, if that were the case, if that were the decision of the town or the will of the town, we would play, field hockey would play, practice and play everything out of that field. Football would still, high school football would still just play games out of that field. Youth football would practice and play out of that field. And soccer would play more night games on that field. We'd probably double or triple the amount of night games we play. And then in the spring, all high school lacrosse, boys and girls, would practice and play out of that field, and then youth would come in afterwards. Again, that's with a synthetic surface. With a natural grass surface, you're really not going to see a change in current practices because it's,
Yep.
yeah, I heard somebody make a good quote about, a natural grass field. If you were a cattle rancher and you had a large enough pasture for five head of cattle, but you had 10 head of cattle, what would happen? Your cattle would die, and you wouldn't have a pasture either. And it's kind of where we're at with natural grass in Littleton. It really can't hold up to the amount of usage. So I think the next slide will probably demonstrate
Okay.
what, the slide on the left, those are the trenches that line Alumni Field on either side. The field is, what do we figure the field is, 50 years old, construction?
Yeah, my research has found that the field was built at the same time that the Russell Street School was constructed in 1968. And those there, what you see are
So-
drainage trenches that were put in to take the flow of the water off the field. It's the only drainage under the field. And in order to get those to work, unfortunately, the crown of the field is substantial to get the water to flow off that field. It's quite impressive to go stand on the end line of that field and look across, and you can see, there's
Well, that's the
several
way,
feet of
that's
pitch.
the way they were back then.
Oh,
Yeah.
exactly,
I mean, that's,
exactly.
it's
Yeah,
There's no plan B. That was-
yeah. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
the issue with the trenches is, as you can see, there's a blue line. That's the soccer, that's the soccer lines for when we play the night soccer over there. So that blue line, you can see, is right on the edge of where it really starts to run off into the trench.
Yeah.
And the picture really can't do it justice, but when we have soccer there, soccer's a sport where the kids play right along the line often, and the ball's right along the line, and as they play it, as long as the ball's on the line, the ball's still in play. So they'll be playing a ball on the line, and they'll go running into the trench. I watch when I see them do that. I always hope that kids don't get hurt. And then when it does go out of bounds, they have to do their throw-ins across the trench, and that trench is essentially lined with like a crushed stone. It's not even a crushed stone; it's actually like stones, and not ideal. And the girls lacrosse field, again, the sideline, and this is a modified girls lacrosse field. It's not even the width that you would like. That line is right along there too. Again, the girls are playing right along the edge. Football's not as much of an issue. You can see the white line there. It's quite a ways away from the trench, but believe it or not, kids do get, when there are plays along the sideline, kids will
Pushed
get
in.
tackled, and they will go into the trench. The trenches are really bad. That's not me embellishing anything. The trenches are terrible for any sport other than football. Very treacherous, very dangerous, and I feel like it's absolutely the biggest issue with this field are those trenches there. And I just think that at the absolute least, we have to address those trenches. They can't be there for sports like soccer and lacrosse, and they're not great for football either. And on the right, I'm not sure of the name of that weed, but that weed is everywhere in the field. And it turns to a rust, this time of year, it's like a rusty brown. When we took that picture, it was like that greenish green with red tints, but now it's like a rusty brown. You can, if you go to the field, Tom just played on it last weekend. When you go to the field, you can see it pretty much. There's a rusty brown shading all over the field from that weed there.
So this is where the grass is? That what
Yeah,
you're saying?
that's
Is that
that's
really
just a
it?
picture right in the middle of the field.
Okay, that's the grass, okay.
That's
That's a close-up of the weed.
that's a close-up shot
It's
of.
prevalent amongst that. And this, the one thing, Mike would tell you is they spent several $1,000s back 3 years ago to sod the entire center of that field. And that, you wouldn't even know that that was done. I believe that was done 3 years ago.
It was 7,000, and that's what the highway donated. Taking
Donating
labor.
all the labor.
It was 7,000 for the sod essentially, and it's gone. But all right. Next, yeah. So the slide on the left, that's I tried to illustrate to people who maybe don't have the time to actually go to the field. The person taking the picture is on the home sideline. I'm on the away sideline, standing on the sideline where the football kids were, and you can basically see you can't see my knees, so that's standing on one side, just to illustrate the amount of the crown on the field. And actually you can get a good view of that rusty weed I was talking about. It's right all across the middle there, right in front of the picture. And then the slide on the right that's the area where the cheerleaders are work. We have 22 cheerleaders this year. Cheerleading is incredibly popular right now with youth and at the high school level, and it's not going anywhere. So there's going to probably even be larger cheerleading squads. We have 22 right now, and they're in between that rope and the front of the bleachers there. It's not really adequate space for them to do their cheers. We make it work. In order to do that, we actually have to rope off the area between that set of stairs and the set of stairs in the middle of the bleachers, so it limits the access for people in the front to get up to the bleachers. So for people to get to the right side of the bleachers, they have to actually go up the middle section of stairs and then cut across the bleachers, because that's where we have our cheerleaders and we have it roped off. And it's not level there. So again, just, issues you would have at a almost 50-year-old field, things that they didn't think of back, 48 years ago, or whatever the math was on that. So, all right, next one. Under the bleachers, that's a picture, obviously, of the frame underneath the bleachers. Pretty much most of the frame underneath the bleachers is similar to that. There's definitely a good amount of surface rust. The bleachers are quite old as well, and they are rusting. There's been a paint. They painted it with some kind of special paint a few years ago, but it's chipping off. And then the other picture is the press box up top. That's just some of the T111. Obviously, can that be replaced? Yes. But what that's indicative of, the structure of the press box is not, it's getting to the end of its lifespan. The joists and even like the front wall, I mean, there's a lot of rot in that press box. It is getting to the point where it would need a major overhaul.
I think one of the things that you discussed at the Board of Selectmen meeting as well was the fact of just how, for Mike to set up any event there right now, it's so inadequate with the electrical and having to set up the speakers, whereas any other facility in the league for high school athletics, to basically flip a switch and you've got all your PA equipment already set up, and this essentially you have to haul all the speakers and stuff have to be brought up there and hooked up, and it's a task every time. It clearly is falling apart. It's outlived its lifespan, essentially.
I mean, is it still structurally safe to use at this point?
Not a structural engineer.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I grew up in Winchester, and Winchester condemned their stands at the high school where we used to play our football games. These stands are in worse shape than Winchester's when they were condemned, which is scary.
We just, last Friday night, we had another successful, up until Friday night, I guess you could look at it that way, but we had a huge crowd on hand at the field on Friday night. I mean, it was a great night. It was, and the bleachers were at capacity, and that's all I'm going to say. They were at capacity. So, if we continue to have, I guess, football and big football games and graduation are the two events you have where you look up and the bleachers are full. And, full bleachers, if you would not want to have a catastrophic event with full bleachers.
I can tell you that in the facility study that was done in 2012 and 13, this was one of the first items that they picked up as, in need of address.
One of the other things
Nobody has brought forward, and it's been, this has been a bee under my bonnet since that plan has brought forth. The town has not funded that program, and choices have been made, and I just don't think we're spending the money where we should be spending it. It's as simple as that.
Well, it's a big liability for the town.
Well, I'm absolutely in agreement.
The,
Tear the damn things down, even if people have to stand on the sideline. If it's a liability, they shouldn't be there.
Right.
It's crazy.
The other thing you see these days, and I've been at schools that have a worse situation as far as this goes, as far as bleachers. Our bleachers are open, so they have the planks that you walk on and then the planks that you sit on, and this area is open. Obviously, small children goofing around on those bleachers could fall through. And that's how all bleachers were made back then.
Yep.
Now bleachers are completely enclosed, and I don't know if you call it a kickboard. What would you call it?
A kickboard works.
Kickboard, whatever. You can't. Your wallet's not going to even fall through your cell phone, but more importantly, little kids or an elderly person isn't going to false step and miss the plank. So there's that issue, but the planking on the bleachers is in tremendous, it's all aluminum, so that's all good. There's not enough of it because it doesn't have the kickboards, but it's really a structure underneath that I think.
There's the other note is that, again, keeping with bleachers that were built 50 years ago, there's no accessibility on those bleachers either.
No.
And that's something that would need to
That's a
be
good
addressed.
point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So it is what it. Nobody likes porta potties. Nobody likes them. I've never met a person who enjoys using a porta potty. So
I can guarantee you, women like them less than guys do.
I know it. So we have, our field is situated, in an ideal world, we would have a field and a track up at the high school, but that's not the reality in Littleton. Littleton's a great town, we have many great assets, we're not complaining, it is what it is, we make it work. But when you have the field and the track over by an intermediate building and a middle school, we really don't have access to those buildings. The principals, and I don't blame them, they don't want high school kids from our own town or other towns going into elementary school buildings or middle school buildings. So those buildings are really off limits to us. So when we hold events, obviously the football field, we hold major events, the largest events the school holds all year. That's our facilities right there. We have 3 porta potties. When we have home football games, when the team arrives, we do have a custodian who brings them in the middle school to use the bathrooms when they first get there. But then once they come out, they're using the porta potties. For lacrosse and soccer and sports like that, we don't do that. So when teams are arriving, we have those 3 units there. You take a home football game, we have 53 players, 22 cheerleaders, that's 75 kids. Say the other school brings us about the same amount, it's 150 kids, all nervous. You've got parents showing up, again, grandparents showing up, younger children showing up. That's really not a great scenario. We don't really have running water. We have a hose coming off the back of the concession, but we don't have running water into a sink. We don't, so there's some issues there with facilities. And then just on the outside there, that's the sidewalk just outside of Alumni Field. You can see the fences tipping over at one part. I mean, I think it's safe. It's just been hit or something by a plow or whatever it was. But obviously the sidewalk is pretty unsightly and could use some attention as well. Okay, and these slides are in regards to the high school field, which we play lacrosse on. And again, if we move some of these things over to Alumni, we would make this situation better up here. This used to be, we used to have 2 varsity level soccer fields side by side before we added lacrosse. And I don't want to sound like I'm anti-lacrosse because both my kids play and I'm the athletic director who brought lacrosse to the schools. I didn't bring it to the town, but I brought it to the schools. And I'm very much in favor of lacrosse. I think it's great. It's a great sport, but it is hard on fields. Boys lacrosse and football are the 2 sports that are the hardest on fields with the most repetitive action in the same areas. Soccer is not a sport that's hard on fields. As a result, the soccer kids have to play on a chewed-up field because we play lacrosse on that same field. And now we use the one here that you see, we use that for JV, and then we use the one on the left for varsity, so the boys and girls varsity kind of share that one, and JV's on this one. It's hard to get the field back renovated in time because really it's just winter and then...
That picture was taken in October of 2014, and you'll see a picture coming up from the season last year for boys.
Excuse me, that's the corner of the high school parking lot?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Why is that one so much worse? I'm sorry, go ahead, Fred, you're in the middle of something else first.
If the town decides to spend a lot of money on fields, would it make sense to do the super field up at the high school? Addresses your locker rooms, addresses your toilet issues. You've got better parking up there for events. And then Alumni Field could be, whether grass or whatever it is, it could be for other sports. I mean, if we're saying that the town's going to spend the money,
One of the
what's so sacred about Alumni Field?
you got to use porta potties, you got mediocre parking, you got, you know, to me, it's got strikes against it for a major event where the high school has a lot of the amenities, if you will, that you would be looking for to put in down below. So I don't know, is anybody
I think
thought
that
about
there's-
this, or is this doesn't
there's
work, or?
Certainly some, I think the biggest thing is you have very limited space already at the high school with, if you were to get a full shot of what Mike has behind the high school for fields, you essentially have these two athletic fields here, the soccer field. That soccer field on the left-hand side, which Mike labeled as the varsity soccer field, also is the right field of the baseball diamond. And just beyond that is where he uses in center field of the baseball field. Just to the left of that field is where he would be practicing for football. To go in and put in a football field on this particular field, because I actually built the fields, that is not regular. That's not a long enough spot for a football field. Football field's 360 feet long. That field end to end is about 330. So you're looking at now having to spin a football field size field.
Okay,
So
just asking a question, it just sounds like a lot of the things you're
Yeah.
asking for
Yep.
are already up there.
The other big thing
Does it make
there-
sense to just plunk the field there and then worry about some of the other sports
I think-
that don't have the same demand?
The only other comment I would make about, as an argument for doing a renovation at Alumni, is the fact that you've got already the substantial item being the lights.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that you'd ever get lights behind the high school with the residents, you know, along New Estate Road and Sleigh Ride Lane, that I don't think would want lights, you know, whereas we don't, you know, the lights at Alumni they've been there since '97, and we don't get any complaints from them. And it is a nice facility. You've got the new parking lot at the middle school that gets substantial use on the big night football games, and I think there's potential to do some additional upgrades to the existing parking lot that's there along the field. So,
You ask a great question, because when we first started this dialogue, I said if we're going to do something substantial, it's got to be at the high school, because we don't want to be in a transportation phase forever, like we are with track. And, you know, we've looked at it, and unfortunately, it seems like the best move would be to look at Alumni, because I think there'd be a lot of opposition to lights at the high school. I don't know if that matters or not, to be honest with you. I don't know if the town could just say, well, we're doing it. I'm not really sure about all that. And it would be hard to fit it. We would have to spin it, and there'd be some issues there, like Kevin said. But, boy, logistically, it'd be so much easier to have a feature field at the high school.
That's what I was thinking.
No, you're not wrong at all. But it's just, I'm not sure if it works. And,
Just a question.
yep.
You know, the residents and the lights is no small problem either.
No.
Because just in building the high school up there, you had lots of opposition along New Estate Road just by putting those fields in.
Yep, yep. And when you look at Alumni Field, there's really, as far as really adjacent neighbors, there's really only one that's really in close proximity to that field. There's really only one house, that farm right there. Everybody else is pretty far away from it, so it's, as far as the lights and the noise from crowd and music and everything else we have going on, we have big nighttime events, it's not really a problem. I think we'd run into issues up at the high school with that. So, again, back at the high school, this is the everyday conditions. This isn't like we got lucky and snapped a picture like exactly. This is every game, every day. Boys lacrosse, that dirt you see streaming out of the stick, that happens every game, every day. Kids are shaking it out of the stick. Again, it's caused by too many heads of cattle on one field. You know, our school teams use it, and then as soon as we're getting off it, the youth teams are waiting right on the sideline to get on the same field. And it's a natural grass field and doesn't have ample time to rest, and So that's what we're looking at. And I think the next slide will probably show you just that's where the kids were playing. That, and look, boys lacrosse fields and natural grass, boys lacrosse field usually look like this. The goal mouth on both sides is completely dirt, and then the face-off area is dirt. Just a very repetitive sport in the same area, just like football is in between the hashes and from 30 to 30. So,
And the idea is, again, to go back to my other question, so if there was an update to Alumni Field, some of those games would be played over there rather than here?
they'd all be played over there.
Okay.
If the
Right.
decision is to go with a
So,
synthetic
I
surface.
understand.
So I know there's a lot of debate right now about synthetic surfaces. There are alternatives to crumb rubber. This presentation isn't about synthetic or natural, but I do want to bring this point up. Synthetic surface is a game changer for the sports of lacrosse and field hockey. It's profound. Field hockey becomes a very fast-moving sport with a ball. We have girls in our program who play club field hockey outside of the high school season, and college coaches will not come watch them play on a grass field because no colleges play on grass fields. They all play on a synthetic surface. And then lacrosse is just, honestly, if I talk to like one of my colleagues who some schools are still in the process of bringing lacrosse online. I say, if you're talking about bringing lacrosse online, start talking about synthetic fields right now, because your grass fields can't hold up to the rigors of the sport of lacrosse. It's just too much repetitive action on the same area. So,
And what is the experience that you know of lacrosse on a synthetic field? Does it beat the living heck out of a synthetic field? Not as rapidly, but if you're going to put football and you're going to put field hockey and you're going to put lacrosse
Yeah.
on a single field, I mean, 10 years from now, we're going to be putting in another field.
well, yeah, the life expectancy, depending on what you use on turf, is 10 to 18 years. The new product they're doing is a monofilament, the little strands of grass, and apparently those last a long time, but it probably costs more money. Sean's not here tonight, and I think that once this initial round of presentations is over, I'll be stepping into more of a support role, and Sean Reardon, the civil engineer who the selectmen accepted his services, he will then be the person to answer all those types of questions. He's the expert on synthetic surfaces, natural surfaces, the cost of things, and but I felt like we were kind of going that direction here because we're talking about these things. From my perspective, synthetic surfaces have a profound impact on sports of field hockey and lacrosse. Kids throw bounce passes in lacrosse. Our kids are scooping balls out of the dirt and shaking the stick, whereas on a synthetic surface, the scoop is just it's a natural action, and they're throwing precision bounce passes to each other, and it is amazing. It's an amazing change. Football and soccer, not as much, but those sports.
On
Big
one
difference.
note, I would say, at Alumni Field, though, however, soccer is different than every other field that you're playing simply because of the grade.
Yeah.
You really can't play.
So it's all
Slam.
Whether or not it's grass or turf doesn't, if it was level, I mean, if it's a nice level field and grass for football or for soccer, it would be a beautiful playing surface, and it would stand up better. Football's going to do a decent amount of damage to grass fields, but
Mike, how many schools that the high school plays against today, away games, have synthetic fields?
Right, that's coming up. Wait, no, I'm sorry, that's not part of this. It's not part of this presentation. It probably will be part of the next round. We play, if you go east of 495, we're right on that bisecting line. Turf fields are everywhere. Along 495 and west of 495, just off the top of my head, Oakmont, Lunenburg, Wachusett, these are schools in our league that have it, Leominster, these are all schools we play in lacrosse or different sports.
And they had it, synthetic fields, or they don't?
Tingsboro, they do have, these all have synthetic. But then if you schools that we maybe don't compete against, but right in this area. Westford now has 3. Acton Boxborough.
Tech has one.
Neshoba Tech just put one in. Acton Boxborough has 3. Lincoln Sudbury has 3 on campus and another one across town.
Neshoba Regional.
Concord Carlisle just put in 2. Neshoba Regional put in 1. Lunenburg has 1. Might be putting in a second one with their high school. They're going back and forth with that. Tingsboro has 1. They're one of the older ones actually in the area. They're one of the first schools to get it.
How old is that field in
Tingsboro,
Yeah.
it's around 10 years.
Is it in still good shape?
Yeah, that one's actually in pretty good shape, I thought, when we played there. Lunenburg's field hasn't held up as well as they would have hoped, but as I understand, I think it wasn't a great install and maybe wasn't the greatest product when they first did it.
My understanding with the Lunenburg one was that a lot of local people did some of the work, so it wasn't like it was
Yeah.
wasn't one company that was experienced in doing it. And it's still, the field still looks good, it's just,
Yeah.
but I think that's not the way you'd want to go.
I know when Alicia Day was here, she mentioned some town, I don't remember which one it was, but she said there was some town that she knew, after 8 years, it hadn't been well maintained, and so it was really showing the wear already, but I don't remember what town she mentioned.
Yeah, I know, who did I talk to recently that they were going on 14 years with theirs? I was collecting information about that, and one of the ADs I talked to, theirs was 14 years old. Might have been Westboro. I can't remember exactly. That's probably going to be part of the next presentation when we do. We'll have all kinds of information in regards to natural versus synthetic, and I'm sure there's going to be some town dialogue in regards to that.
Have you had any other athletic directors come in and say, we don't want to play in Littleton because they're
Okay,
girls?
I can share you, yes, we have had some issues with alumni. I've had schools that, I only play soccer over there when it's at night. Our kids hate the field but want to play some night soccer at home, so we do some games over there. I have had athletic directors say, my coach won't come over and play in that field anymore, not for soccer. And then I ask them, I say, well, when you ask me to come over your place for night games, we come, and your parents like it, and we like to do the same thing. Like, sorry, we just won't come and feel like the field's not safe for soccer. Luckily, I'm able to find, typically I do 2 boys and 2 girls nights there, and I'm able to find other athletic directors who say, yeah, we'll do that. We all help each other out to get the night games in for our parents and kids. Oakmont's another school at turf synthetic field. This year, because our field actually is in the worst shape it's been in many, many years, I've been sending a pregame email saying, hey, our field's not in the greatest shape, it's off-site, just a reminder, and just a reminder it's not in the greatest shape. And the Oakmont guys showed up, and the athletic director said, you said it wasn't in the greatest shape, but this is actually worse than I would have expected. And the coach said, hey, coach, it's just going to be a good old sandlot game. So that's a coach who's coming from a turf synthetic field, though, out in Oakmont. Which you're actually going to see on a slide here coming up. So, yeah, the field, honestly, for sports like girls lacrosse, it's actually kind of embarrassing. When we play schools in girls lacrosse that have a turf field, we have schools that if they're a non-league school, Wachusett comes to mind. We play them one time a year. I'm working with her. We're going to book a game with her. I tell Jen every time, I say, we'll come to you again this year. Our playing situation hasn't changed, and we'll just come to you every year until we get this resolved and play on your synthetic field. Schools that we play in league, where we play home and away, we'll do one at home, one away. But girls lacrosse is really bad on the field, and it was our only answer. We looked at every possible way we could do this. Same thing with boys lacrosse. If we were playing a school that was a non-league game, we're only going to play them once during the season, we would probably, until we get to a better situation, we would choose to play them away if they had a synthetic field, as opposed to have them come to our place. League games are a little different. We play home and away. So that's that same picture. This is a good example of what we're just talking about. On June 2nd, this past spring, we gave away a home MIA tournament lacrosse game to Oakmont due to field conditions. So that morning, we had a lot of rain overnight. I called up Oakmont. I said, Eric, there's no way we can play today. And it's during that time of year where there's award ceremonies, graduations. It's a very tight time. And we had a nighttime event, and he had an event, and we're like, if we don't play today, we're not going to be able to get this game in for like 3 days, and the tournament's already supposed to have been to the next round by then. And we did something that you don't often do. We went to Oakmont on that day on June 2nd, and if you see the next slide, that's our field on June 2nd, and that's the field we ended up playing on June 2nd. So, again, trying to not go down the synthetic or grass road here, but it's coming up a little bit. On that particular day, that was what a synthetic field looked like on that day, and you saw the picture of our field. And we played that day. We actually won. Anyways, just a little bit of just town pride type stuff. 68% of our students at LHS play at least one sport. That's last year's data. We had 447 students last year. We have 451 this year. 303 kids played. And to me, that was, in the 10 years I've been the athletic director, we've hovered in the 60s, but last year was our all-time high at 68%. And that's just such an incredible stat for us. That's the one that I think the school administration team is probably the most proud of, that how many kids participate in one way or another in sports at Littleton High School. We have 25 total sport offerings at the high school. That includes 4 cooperatives, so we have 21 under our roof, and then we go elsewhere for boys and girls swimming and gymnastics and girls ice hockey. We have 39 total teams. That's between varsity, JV, and we have a handful of middle school teams, 21 varsity sports. 19 of our 21 varsity sports last year qualified for the MIA tournament. I can tell you this past fall, every one of our fall teams made the MIA tournament. 6 of our varsity teams last year won their league championship, and 5 of our varsity teams completed undefeated seasons last year. I guess the point I'm trying to make there is sports are important to 68% of the kids that attend our high school. And we've been lucky to be very, very successful in recent years in terms of wins and losses. So on a competitive level, our kids, we have some pretty darn good kids playing sports for us right now. And that shouldn't be the definitive piece, but I just felt like it was worth highlighting here.
That's a good number, 68%. Is that on the rise, or is that kind of...
It has been on the rise. And part of the reason why it's been on the rise, so I've been the athletic director for 10 years. When I took over the job 10 years ago, we had 14 varsity sports. We now have 21. We've added boys and girls lacrosse, which last year we had, between boys and girls lacrosse, that was 73 kids playing, a sport that we didn't have 10 years ago between boys and girls. I think we had, between boys and girls, 73. Indoor track, boys and girls indoor track, boys and girls cross country, and then boys tennis. So not all those sports obviously would use alumni, but so yes, it's risen dramatically because of the addition of sports and then seeing continual growth. Just to give you an example, we used to get, before we refinished the track, we used to have, 50 to 60 kids doing outdoor track. Last year we had 113. So it's kind of like that build it and they will come concept. We went from, hovering in the 50 to 60 range to having 113 kids doing outdoor track last spring, which is the all-time high for me during my 10 years.
One of the things that I always, when I talk to other people about Littleton and the schools and how it works, that I like the best, and it is sports and other things, is that you don't have to be a superstar by the time you're 10 to be able to play.
Right.
If you're in high school, you say, I'd like to try it. And you should be doing that in high
Yeah.
school. And you still have that opportunity here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we're talking about sports tonight, but the arts are, you should all know, the arts are thriving at our school too. And I'll tell anybody, athletics and arts are great indicators for healthy school and a happy school and kids that are engaged in what they're doing. And theater, and I've never seen more kids participating in the theater, the band, and visual arts and those types of things. So you get crossover kids too that do sports and maybe are in the play or whatever. But so kids are involved and engaged in a lot of co-curriculars at Littleton right now. Youth, maybe Kev?
Yeah, just mentioning again, part of the reason that high school sport athletics have been so successful is because of the youth programs, which I was at one time associated with the youth football and the cheer back in 2012, 2013. Again, 250 athletes participating in those programs. They clearly used Alumni Field. We're using And most of these that you see for youth sports are using actual field space. But youth soccer is extremely healthy. Again, 500 participants in fall, 500 participants in spring. Really one of the only sports that plays both seasons. But you see just at the youth level the demand on fields. Looking at these numbers, again, the youth lacrosse, which 10 years ago there was no youth lacrosse in Littleton, and now it's a thriving program. It continues to grow, and those teams do very well. They compete. I know the girls' youth lacrosse program competes mostly inside of 495 during their season, and they do very, very well against much bigger towns. It's a testament to the coaches and to the work they put in to develop them. And again, they're all matriculating up to the high school level, and will help those programs. But again, they're using Alumni Field. The youth boys lacrosse uses the field behind the high school right now that you saw is in such poor condition. And then again, the youth baseball and softball in town has got another 216 participants. So sports in Littleton are very healthy, and I think it's a testament to the people that put in the time to teach these kids. And I just think that looking at what we have for facilities, that's the one downfall. And giving you a quick story, I coached the boys lacrosse. My son is now, my younger son just became a freshman this year, but up until last year I coached his team with boys lacrosse. And similar situation, we had gone an undefeated season and earned the right to host the championships at Littleton, and the teams that were lined up to play did not want to play because of the condition of the field. We ended up, standing our ground and did get to play in Littleton, but it was clearly evident that they didn't want to play there. We had an option to play at Neshoba, which was turf, and they wanted to host it, and we felt like our kids had put in the time and had gone with the undefeated this season. They deserved to host the championships. But again, you just see that the health. This is clearly just showing the health of the youth sports in town, and it reflects really on the need for us as adults to try to address this situation. Because I know one of the frustrations, and I think one of the things that brought Mike and I together a few years ago to start looking at some of these things is, I think it's been clearly laid out over the last several years that we need to do something about athletic fields in this town, whether we expand it. And now, as I've seen, my time put in with the high school athletics, as my kids have gotten older, and seeing, the conditions that our kids are playing in, I think that the time's now to try to really bring this to the forefront and get some action on it. And there's such a, when you really dig into it, especially with Alumni Field, there's a lot of other items which can be addressed. Clearly, the bleachers being in the facilities. So we have an opportunity, and with what the selectmen have allowed us to do with bringing Sean Reardon in, to really come up with a nice vision for what, will hopefully solve some issues for the high school athletics especially, but I think it will go down to the youth level as well. And that's kind of been our focus.
So is the charter that you guys have given him to basically focus on Alumni Field, or focus on the athletic fields in the town?
The Alumni Field,
So we predisposed the answer. He's going to come back and say you need a new field and new stands.
Well, I think we went to the selectmen with the proposal to bring Sean's services into looking at what can be done about Alumni Field. Because regardless of anything else, that field, the bleachers are clearly an issue, and the field is really an unsafe field as it is for playing pretty much any sport. So that's, I went through the whole process, a year and a half ago of trying to, look at potentially doing some work behind the high school and as well.
Yep.
And we ran into a lot of opposition to that, and I think looking at this, obviously we went to town and bringing potential to bring a turf field there with town meeting, and
In addition to Alumni, originally the discussion was 2 or 3
right,
fields.
doing
opposed
a
to
couple
just
of
one.
fields. And the issue behind the high school, clearly, and Mike would attest to this, the grading of those fields is good.
Yeah.
It comes down to a situation they cannot handle as Mike so nicely laid out, you got too many cattle grazing on that field. It cannot support the amount of use it's getting. But if you were to do something about alumni, and certainly I think if the turf was a decision that the town decided to go down that road and look to put a synthetic field into alumni field, it would alleviate, from what Mike has laid out, that demand on those fields behind the high school. So that particular field that we potentially talked about putting turf on could become back to what he had there 7, 8 years ago before lacrosse came on board, and you had an opportunity to rest that field. Because back in 2005, 2006, before lacrosse, those fields behind the high school were essentially used in the fall, and they got no use in the spring.
They were pristine, to be honest with you. That was
Soccer, right?
yeah, soccer. Yeah, soccer actually. Most people involved with soccer would tell you they like natural. Soccer is probably the one sport that likes natural grass better. However, you know, if I'm sure if alumni was nice and flat and had the width they needed and it was synthetic, they'd happily play on it. But you know, if they were given their druthers, natural grass still is a better surface for soccer. Most coaches I talk to, even kids, either you know, but even so, that facility down in Lancaster is all synthetic. That big, huge soccer facility, but you know, soccer does play well on grass still, I think. And
Was the Olympics where the women, they wanted to
World
play
Cup.
artificial, and they said, no, we want grass?
they want the grass like the men, you know.
Right, right.
And up at the high school, like Kevin said, the grade is great there. They're really wide soccer fields. They play well, and the other thing is there's an irrigation system all there. So if that field was renovated, the one that's damaged, it's very easy to get it back online because you can manage the water and
You don't have lacrosse playing on it.
and you don't have lacrosse playing on it. And what would happen then is you would go, schools would use it for fall soccer and the town could, and then the spring, the town would pick up an additional soccer field because we wouldn't be playing lacrosse there. And it doesn't impact our baseball field because that one's further, you know, overall far to the right. So, and then just some closing thoughts here. In the past, you know, Littleton is an amazing place. Obviously, we're all here. I mean, I work in Littleton. I live in Littleton. I'm raising my kids here, and we've done a great job with bricks and mortar in Littleton. I think that we got ahead of a lot of towns with our schools. This is just me observing these things. I'm not, you know, the high school, we got on when you had that tremendous reimbursement rate way back when we did the high school. Then we did the middle school, then the Russell Street renovation, then obviously the police department. I know some of my colleagues were behind this whole wave of what we did, and they're not getting the reimbursement rate, and obviously things have gotten more expensive, and it took them forever to get a new school, and all those things are behind us. We're set for a long time with our buildings, from my perspective. But I think we've missed opportunities to renovate existing athletic facilities as part of major construction projects. You know, we did the high school, and we put nice back fields at the high school, but we did not include a track. We did not include a feature field back there. And even then, when you did the high school, back then you could build an entire facility and get it all reimbursed. And then it changed later that they said bricks and mortar only. But back when we did high school, that was all part of the 61% reimbursement. And anyways, we could have got it cheap, but we didn't. That's right. We do not have a feature outdoor athletic facility to match the buildings. I think if you look in between, if we're talking about alumni, the place where we hold graduation, the place where we hold nighttime athletic events, you know, it's right there nestled in between those two. The middle school, obviously, which is a very nice building, and Russell Street School, which has been renovated. It's right there in between those two buildings as a complex. It would be a nice place to have a feature field, even though logistically, yes, I have to transport and whatnot, but I think that's just a reality we're going to have to live with. So. And just got our tiger there. Thanks.
2 million here, 2 million there, pretty soon you get a lot of money. Okay,
Questions or comments for Mike or Kevin?
great.
No, that's a great presentation. I think you're right, it's long overdue. It's to be looked at, and somehow need to find money to do it, though. That's always the challenge, right?
Yep,
Finding
yep.
money.
And just so everybody that presentation, the purpose of that presentation is to just identify the problem and also bring in some other additional information there, but it's not necessarily proposing solutions yet. Sean, who was unable to be here because of a work commitment, after this round of presentations, as I mentioned, I'll be stepping in a support role. Sean will become the lead person. He's the expert on field construction, and Kev's actually pretty knowledgeable about that stuff too. That's just, I just want to be clear that that was the point of that presentation, and that as far as funding and those types of, that's further on down the road.
I think it's important that you were leading this in the beginning anyway, because it needs to come internally. I mean, it clearly does. I mean, the things on my list when I think about this, I still, just the whole safety, the crumb rubber, I mean, we still have to address that, right? Because, I mean, all this stuff is wonderful, but if one kid dies of cancer or something like that's terrible. So, and I know the EPA's looking at it and other people, and you said there's other alternatives, so, but.
Lawrence Academy, Lawrence Academy just put in a new synthetic surface, and Mike Crory was telling me, he was over there, his daughter played in a field hockey tournament over there, and this is what happens when you build a synthetic surface. People are calling you, they want to come, we want to rent it and run a field hockey tournament on Sunday. We sent our middle school team over there to do a kind of season finale tournament, and his daughter's on the team. And he said, you got to get over there and check it out, because they use he said they use the alternative product. It's actually like green, and it's cork, sand, and coconut grinds, the shell. And so that's a very ecologically friendly, not ground up tires.
Right.
Can't see how that can be harmful to people, any of those products, cork, sand, and ground up
I mean,
coconuts.
from a parent standpoint, that's the first thing, and then from a finance committee, I say the second worst thing is we spend $1 million to put this in, and then a year later we have to spend $1.5 million to take it out and put it. That definitely gets me up at night too, you know.
They agree with crumb.
You know.
The crumb rubber is such a hot topic right now. I would say, as people looking at turf fields now, again, Sean's not here, but I would say looking at the alternative products is the way to go. There's just too much controversy right now surrounding crumb rubber, and I know that I thought the EPA was already supposed to have handed a ruling as of like November. I thought Congress told them November 6th or whatever it was.
I haven't
but
seen anything. I saw that too, but I haven't seen anything, yeah. And then the other thing is just still, so the school department now has money in their capital plan for bleachers,
Yeah.
but a field renovation's not in anybody's, you know, and you're here kind of from the school department, but, so that's still the other piece that we're missing here in terms of where does this whole fit in terms of the whole town.
Good question. A good point. And next week, the Thursday, I guess school committee meets on the 12th, but it's I believe it's on the 19th. That's when we're doing this same presentation with the school committee, and I'm sure the dialogue will start with them, and where they take it from there will be their charge. PRCE has already taken a formal vote.
Yeah.
So.
But it's not in their budget.
It's in their capital.
Recommending, it's not.
well, it's
It's in their capital plan request. There's no dollar figure tied to it.
Okay, right.
Because they
So-
don't know what the cost would be, but it is in the capital plan that was
Who's capital
submitted.
plan?
Park and Rec.
Park and Rec.
As of this week, as of this cycle, not before this.
Right.
So that's important too, and then understanding how the Park and Rec and the school do this together too.
Right, I think
Yeah.
that's, again,
makes
It's a nice
going
problem to have,
back,
I guess, yeah.
call it lessons learned.
Yeah.
The approach in
CPC funds, can
trying to
they be used
get
for this?
FinCom and school committee,
Yes.
really the important players to support us, Board of Selectmen clearly.
Yeah.
Because, as Mike said, we now have, as we feel, we've identified the problem, and now it's for us as, bringing these boards on board to come up with a solution. And
You don't have
again,
enough in the revolving fund to pay for it?
no. That's why I didn't run for FinCom.
Yeah. So, and then obviously, just in terms of, money in general, but, we've got, we've got schools and so on now, we have people looking for a fire department, a library, and people want to buy land in town, and so it's always, that's always the
Clearly.
drill. But you're doing the right stuff, and I think going around, and not only to the boards, but to get out to the people in the town that are,
Right.
that aren't familiar with the schools, that aren't here to see what's going on, because most people are going to understand.
It's,
when they-
as I've said in the past, and standing there on last Friday night, watching the game, and from my vantage point, seeing the slope of the field, and I attend most of the games anyways, but, you know, looking at that, I would invite anybody from town. I hope that they, you know, people would see this and read it in the paper and stuff. Take the opportunity to go out and actually see what's there. I mean, it's a real problem. And, you know, again, youth sports are a big part of this town, and we take a lot of pride in them. And I think it's something that, as a town, you know, we should look to do something about the field situation, so.
And just to make sure everybody's clear on this too, yes, I work for the schools as the athletic director and a PE teacher and also a football coach. I'm also a resident of Littleton, and I am a parent of 2 school-age children in Littleton. And yes, and I just want to make it clear, I am not the voice of the schools in this, although I do work for the schools, and my title's obviously on that opening slide. The voice of the schools as we go down this road further will be Kelly and/or Mike Fontanella. But I'm certainly the person as far as hands-on in the schools who deals with the fields. That would be me. So just want to make sure everybody's clear on that I am not the voice of the schools. We're going to make the same presentation, and I am authorized to be making these presentations, but really not beyond that. And
You're just presenting
that's
facts
fine.
at this point.
yeah, that's all we're
It's just a
doing.
condition,
That's all
so
we're doing.
that's-
It's a continuation of dialogue that started last year, and I was more in the background with that group. And then as, you know, I think we learned some things in that first process. The problems haven't changed, and this is just version 2.0. So that's what we're doing.
Great.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much for
much.
your time, appreciate it.
Thank you.
You mentioned
Listen.
there's money to build stands?
Well, it's in
There's a
the capital
request.
There's a request.
That's the first step.
Could they put locker rooms under those stands? Could they put like bathroom facilities and locker rooms?
I think, you know, my vision would be something like Clinton has. I'm not sure if you've seen their building. They have a building with concession here,
Yeah.
and then on flanking that on either side, there's restrooms. In the back, there's like a garage for like field maintenance equipment and some storage. But as far as full-on locker rooms, that probably might be beyond,
Yeah.
you know, what is
I think
possible.
one of the nice things that
The flush toilets, I mean, I think that's a good thing.
We do have this field, another note is you have the pumping station right across the way from the gate at Alumni. So there is an opportunity to put some bathrooms in there.
Yeah.
You know, to what extent you go with that, again, if you want to try to do some sort of additional building with locker rooms, or maybe at least a minimum of like a concession stand with some storage ability, something like that. But I think that's something that, again, we didn't mention earlier, but you do have a pumping station right there that ties into the school system that would be easily accessible for bathrooms. Get rid of the porta potties.
All it takes is money.
Yep. That's what I tell my wife.
It's only money.
All it takes is money. I don't want all the same things you want, but
Put it on their capital planning list.
Exactly.
Great.
all right.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks, guys.
thank you again.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. Interesting, huh? That's good.
I mean, other than the fire department, new library, and underfunding facilities management, and a new ladder truck,
Conservation land.
what else?
Stormwater's coming up, remember that?
Stormwater, okay.
Conservation land, lots of it.
Well, that's always with us. I don't even put that on the list, it's always there.
But this is a better start of the conversation.
No, yeah.
It's just a matter of
This is
choices.
just
You know,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
another thing,
Yeah, absolutely. It is.
What's coming offline? Isn't high school?
not that it's not
Yeah. Well, yeah.
needed, obviously.
2023. Yeah, we placed the debt in 2003.
I thought there was something in
We're gonna have more
2017.
flexibility if you don't do that inside the levy thing, you know?
Everybody up
That's
to
why
Wolf Beach.
that's why the fire station
Well, the
plan was
next big
to
development,
phase that
we should
in
hit them
when,
up for a big stadium.
tried that already, somebody,
For the football and
Potpourri, one of those guys was trying to do.
Yeah, we
Plum.
could have had the Cooper property with
That's right.
a stadium up there, a field.
there you go.
See?
Okay. But I think that this does need to tie in seriously into the discussion, though, of the fire department inside the levy, because that's another opportunity. I mean, it's raising taxes, no matter how you look at it. But in terms of doing more things, that's another opportunity. If there's really a lot of things on the list that people want to do,
Right.
Yeah.
you know?
And, the first time around when the group tried to get town meeting to vote on fields, the turf fields, there was nothing in there about stands. Nothing. And now we've got a $400,000 plug number or some estimate to redo the stands down there. So, I don't know, $1 million field, I don't know what a field costs, 800 to $1 million too.
Pretty much.
That was the figure from last year.
Yeah.
800 to $1 million.
Yeah, just in that range, and you add another 400,000 for stands, and if the damn things are not safe, we should tear them down. I mean, we shouldn't have people on
Yeah.
stands that are unsafe.
But we don't know that they are. I mean, that's what you'd have to have a structural
But
engineer really look
that's-
to see. Are they look ugly, or they look rusty, or are they really
Right.
unsafe? We don't
But
know.
a
We don't know.
structural
I think
engineer
there's a
should look at
structural
them.
problem. I think there's a safety problem in that they're open,
They're open, that part of it, yeah.
and that's really tough.
So, I mean, now you're talking $1.5 million ballpark.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, for a number of years, 2 or 3 years out, there's $1.2 million item for a new ladder truck.
Yep.
So, you
Yep.
do the fields, do the ladder truck. We've got a $6, $7, $8, whatever $1 million fire station coming down.
Library.
Library's the same, another 6 or 7 million, right?
Right, you got the library in a similar situation, you've got
Pretty soon it's going to add
just
up to
some
real
big
money.
things
That's right, billion here, billion there.
that we have to, put all on the same list and make some judgment calls.
And timing, I mean, it may just be, yeah, we all
You may
need
have
to
to
do them,
kick
but
the can down the road.
what happens when? Which ones
Yeah,
happen when?
and,
Yep.
So I know there's a lot of excitement about this right now, but, I'd love to have wonderful fields for the kids to play on, but I think we need to realize that spend the money here, we won't be spending it someplace else. And if that's what the will of town meeting, that's what we'll do. But I think we need to present as balanced a picture to town meeting as we can, and not just heavily slanted one way or heavily slanted the other.
Well, I think you can use CPC funds for some of this. There's probably not much in there.
There isn't
Yeah.
much.
On the recreation side?
CPC is
It's relatively,
tapped out anytime.
Yeah, there's 100,000 right now allocated for active recreation.
Right.
In that fund, but,
Whole nother,
yeah, I mean,
and
been hitting that pretty
If
hard.
you
whole nother
bond it-
strat in terms of the
If you
kind of
bond
money.
it out,
You can only bond what you know you're going to collect or what you're estimated to collect in the levy, not the state match. And we are pretty much bonded to the hilt.
even on the active recreation side of it? Because isn't there supposed to be 10% of that allocated
No.
to active?
No. There's 10, 10, 10, and 70%. And the 70% can go for any of the first three, which is housing, conservation, and the heck else was it? Historic
historic.
preservation. And then the last 70% can be used for any of those three plus recreation. So there's no 10%
there's-
just for recreation.
Oh, it's not. Why did I think
There's a leftover factor.
sort of the all others, none of the above
Maybe even if there
category.
were, it's still not significant relative to these kind of numbers. I mean,
No.
it's-
Right, that-
everything helps, but
And the quote blended fund that the town has been trying to work on, the matching funds that this year, I believe, is down to 17%
That's because
match.
every other town in the state's doing it.
Sure,
And
well,
it's
duh.
selling as many
Smell that
homes,
one
right?
coming.
Doesn't it come from real estate transactions or something like that? The funds come
That was a
Yeah,
long-term
deed
tax
transactions.
program.
It's like every other state program. It starts off wonderfully and gets whittled back and whittled back and whittled back.
Our
So-
estimate is like 220,000 on the 1% surcharge per year. So 10% is 22,000.
$1,000.
And that's all I can commit in a bond. So we've already bonded for conservation properties and for historic preservation properties. So those are tapped, really.
We're done.
So, I can't do anything unless we appropriate additional money in, or we get state matching funds in, or,
I thought in the back of my head that we had a bucket just for active recreation.
the only thing we have specific for active recreation was the mitigation funds that were specifically given for active recreation from 15 Great Road, which went into CPC. So that sits separately allocated.
And that's
within that
$100,000.
100,000, yeah.
It'll help, but it's not gonna,
Right.
it's not gonna solve.
It's not the answer, but it could be a piece of the answer, absolutely.
Well, I think what happens too in these projects, particularly around turf fields, is that there is an element of private money that comes into the equation, through fundraising and, club teams that, have funds that they can pitch in. So I've seen that happen a lot where, the town might come up with a set amount.
Yep.
Okay, you raise 50% or 70%, and we'll get you the rest of the way there.
It didn't happen with the track.
What's that?
That did not happen with the track. There was no fundraising for the track. We just did an override on it, and it was voted through at town meeting.
Well, they did a lot of fundraising activity, but it raised very little in funding.
Yeah, but they didn't put that towards the,
No, they did not. That's separate through the Littleton Track Organization, and they retain custody of those funds.
Right.
Yeah. And, the issue with track is that, track isn't, it's a limited sport. In other words, there's only one sport that uses the track, and that's track. With turf fields, you can get youth soccer, youth lacrosse, and youth football, youth field hockey, or what have you. You can get efforts from all those organizations that can go out and do fundraising.
has there been any discussion about that? Does anybody know? That they're looking at doing some fundraising to help, or are they looking
But
for the town?
this is
heard.
just
They're
being
just
fired up
starting.
again.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
it
sure
really
they
hasn't.
will.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, all right.
I'm going to be quick if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, let's
Please
do
do.
it quick.
So
Yeah,
this
read your book.
Is your book readable?
read it before
And it's
Friday.
beautiful, and I feel like I give birth to
This
these
is
every year. So,
Bonnie, I noticed there's nothing under tab 21 and 22.
tab 21 is the Light and Water Department. I did speak with Scott today, and I asked him if he had anything, and he said it's too early in their process for water to submit anything. I just sent him an email saying, are you still coming on Saturday? Because they'd love to have you come anyway, just to have a chat. So I think he planned on it, but I just want to get that confirmation.
Yeah, Greg and I are going to meet with him on Thursday.
Okay. If you can impress that upon him, I mean, even if he doesn't have his budget document, we'd love to see you, Scott.
Yeah, just come and talk to us if you
Yeah.
can.
Because there's a lot going on particularly with water and stormwater. They're very involved in the whole
Well,
stormwater.
and Fred was, again, you have talked to him anyway, and they're doing things over there to make themselves more
Right.
financially stable, and so that's important for
Right.
them to share that and make sure people
They're
understand
doing a
that they're
great
working
job.
hard.
I was just saying, I think,
Right.
he's been
Yeah, right.
very good about being transparent, having a lot of communication with the
Making some hard
town.
choices, yep.
So, I appreciate his involvement. So I will let you know when he confirms or doesn't. 22 is the capital plan. What I need to do is, the capital plan documents for each department are in their individual tabs behind their budget requests. I just finished these today. So I'm going to take all of those tomorrow and compile them into the master document, so you can kind of look at capital all at once. And we'll insert that into tab 22. I'll bring that with me. I'll email it out, but I'll bring it with me in hard copy for the hearing. But all of their capital requests are in here now. They're just right behind their budgets. I did change this up a little bit in that I broke out some of the tabs. I did put put PMBC in here with public buildings and communications under tab 7. I tried to work with Joe a little bit. Joe's been, elsewhere and tied up. But I put in a budget summary, kind of bringing in PMBC into the fold and addressed some of the issues that they had brought up in previous meetings.
So Steve's going to talk to PMBC on Saturday.
I'm going to step off of this panel and talk
Yeah.
for PMBC.
He's going to recuse himself and get on the other side of the table.
Let's see, what else is new in here? I did add it got hole punched on mine, but tab 13 is wastewater and stormwater management. So I kind of culled that out separately to address the current budgeting of it and maybe the future issues that might be coming up. I kind of said, I don't know what the cost in the future is going to be to comply with this new MS4 stormwater permit, but it's out there. I just wanted to get it on the discussion and in front of the radar.
Is it on the schedule, or is it just in the book?
It's in the book, but it'll be covered either by Keith or myself. So we can, because it falls kind of under the town administration.
But is it on the agenda for one of these items?
It's on the agenda to talk about, town administrator, selectmen, town administrator,
That's where you
legal. So
put it
it's
in there
kind of, we
someplace.
put it in
Okay,
there.
all right.
And then I tried to address the time schedule based on last year's usage. So I actually made notes and
Okay,
figured out who
great.
took how much time. And then we shuffled it with Betsy's guidance to put like myself, Keith, and Steve Venuti at the end, because if we're running ahead, we can fill in and get out earlier. And if not, we'll be there at the end. So everybody's confirmed, everybody's sent me back
Okay.
everything. Other than those 2 tabs, every tab has something, so.
Okay.
And that's that. So I will have the master
Well-
budget sheet and the master capital plan for you before, but this will give you time to go through the department requests. They did a good job this year, I have to say. Everybody gave me everything I needed.
Nice.
And it's all in the same format.
Very nice. That's
Thank
good.
you.
That's good. Yeah, well, yeah. Thanks
That's a
to some of
big
our
job.
new people that have done it, yeah. It's a lot of work, Bonnie. Thank you
Oh,
very much
it's-
for putting all that
I
together.
I
know
actually
that's-
looked at it today and went, wow, this looks pretty good.
Yeah. That's good.
So,
All right. So did somebody email Mary Dugan to make biscottis and bring them over here?
I'm sure she will. But I can send her a
Please.
That's the best part.
I did shorten lunch. I think we had
Okay,
45
yeah.
minutes last year.
Yeah, it was
I
too
shortened
much.
it to a half an hour.
Yeah,
We'll just
good.
have sandwiches brought in and coffee and whatever.
Good.
But
Okay, and no snow, so that's good.
It's always positive.
Very good.
Well, it was December when we did that first one. It was snowed that day, right? It was early December.
tax classification hearing will be set for the 7th of December, just in case.
December 7th.
If you're interested.
So, how does that happen? Is that at a Board of Selectmen meeting, or this is separate?
It's a Board of Selectmen meeting under the statute. The Board of Selectmen set the shift. They don't set the rate, they set the shift between commercial and industrial, commercial and residential. So that's a Board of Selectmen decision.
And today, we are where, for the new people?
Yep.
What
is the breakdown now?
percentage between
What's
the
the
two?
split?
Oh, God, I think it was .88152 or something like that. So we have a significant shift to commercial industrial than residential. I think the commercial rate is close to 30, and the residential is like 18 and change. So, we are in a reval year, so what that means is we've gone out and done a more formal evaluation of property values. We've taken sales data into consideration. So property values in the town have gone up. That doesn't mean we get to spend more money. We spend $30 million every year. All this does is figure out where we allocate it. So you get new values, the rate might go down, it might stay the same, it might go up, but your bill will probably be up.
Boy, what a surprise.
There is no downside to this. It's all upside. One of those few things in government,
No, that's nothing that's on, well, anyway.
I love
go
the
there.
fact that my taxes go up every year.
Don't we all?
So stay tuned.
Okay. Any other questions on this?
None.
Otherwise, so we had held the minutes from the October 6th meeting last time because Paul wanted to put some updates, and then today he said he looked at them again and he's fine with them as they are. So, does anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second?
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the October 6th meetings are approved, and Bonnie, can you
Yep, I'm
get those, but official then with?
Yep.
Okay. And then, I didn't do minutes from the 27th, so we'll have to hold on that one. Or anybody else. See if Marilyn gets back, she can watch them on TV or something, do them, I guess. So that's what I've got. Anything else?
I move to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. See you on Saturday.